Hello everyone, I'm Sujeet Pathak. I'm a senior product manager at Amoeboids Technologies. We are a Atlassian Platinum Marketplace partner. And welcome to the second episode of this podcast series that we have recently started called Release Notes, the Expert's Perspective. In this series, we speak to the leading experienced technical writers across the leading organizations in the world, and we understand their experiences and nuances about release notes writing in particular. Today we have with us Chauntain Shields. She's a senior technical writer at Microsoft, and she has a decade-long career in this field. Hi, Chauntain, and welcome to the session. Thanks again for joining us today.
Hi, Sujeet. I'm happy to be here.
Great. So, before we begin our discussion around the topic that is release notes in particular, let me begin, asking you about your journey in general, like what got you into technical writing?
So my journey started with my undergraduate degree. I earned my undergraduate degree in creative writing, and I originally wanted to be a creative writer. Okay. From there, I wanted to get into a master's program, but the program I wanted to get into wouldn't take local people. So I needed to look at something else that was available. And there was a master's program in technical writing. So from the very first class in the technical writing master's program, I was completely hooked on technical writing. And I just found that I have a real passion for it, that I'm actually very good at it. And I've been in technical writing ever since.
Okay. So just, about there are various aspects to the technical writing profession, right? So what in particular that attracted you towards this, like anything that you most enjoyed over the years?
The thing that I most enjoy about technical writing is organizing information. I just like being able to collaborate with other people, take their ideas and make them more understandable to other audiences. So those kinds of things just really appealed to me, and I found a lot of success with that.
Okay, that's great. So, you have been into this for more than a decade, I can see from your LinkedIn profile. What are the notable changes that you have seen in technical writing space since you started your career?
I think the biggest change that I've seen in technical writing is the shift away from pure technical writing as a career field. And now I'm seeing technical writing being more diverse, meaning that technical writers are content developers. They are in marketing. They are developing videos, and it's not just about documentation anymore. It's about content. It's about making that content usable in a variety of mediums. So that's the biggest thing that I've seen that's happened over the past 12 years.
Yeah, like in any other field, like we most of the fields we have last decade or so, we have gone from text to video in general speaking. So it's definitely true for your profession as well. So let us start with the main topic of our discussion today, that is release notes. So to the audience, if anyone doesn't know, release notes are the documents which generally are released by any software organization whenever there is a new release of their software products, and they generally contains what are the new features that they're releasing, what are the improvements that they're doing for their existing features, or what are the bugs that they have fixed. In general, these are generally addressed towards the users of their products or the customers of the product. But having said that, it's not limited to that. Many times release notes are also generated for internal audience, like your QA team or your customer success team or other development team. So this is the basics about the release notes. So Chauntain, when you work on generating a release notes for a particular software release, how do you determine what information should be included in those release notes? How do you go about that?
So the release notes really aren't something that the technical writer determines. Generally, in my experience, release notes are determined by the research and development team, the engineering team,
Okay.
and product management. So really, it's a very large group effort to determine what should be included in the release notes, because they need to coincide with whatever product or feature is being rolled out or introduced in the next cycle, whenever that may be. So
Right.
really, the technical writer's role is to take the notes and put them together and organize them in a coherent format that makes sense for the content that's being delivered and the audience being delivered to. So, so that's one of the things that I think is a misnomer, that the technical writer controls that. We really don't. So, and with that being said, generally, in my experience, release notes are generally targeted towards a single audience. We don't typically make multiple versions of the release notes. There's usually just one version. And then that version is placed wherever the lowest common denominator is. So typically customer view, customer access. And that's how they are formatted from my experience. I mean, there could be instances where that's not the case, but that's my experience.
Obviously. Okay, great. So as you mentioned, like this is a kind of a group experience. It's not just the technical writers, but they are someone who are coordinating those efforts with the all other stakeholders, like the development team or the engineering team and the product management team, and some other might also be involved. So having said that, like it's obvious that it's not the overnight exercise, right? It's a continuous process. So the releases happens in a certain frequency, and so as you embark on a particular release, the release notes process or the documentation process also need to happen in parallel to that, the development process, right? So how do you
Yes.
integrate this process of generation of release notes with your product development or your release management process?
So generally you're going to have some deadlines for your drafts. And so usually if your team is running pretty efficiently, which hopefully it is, if you're putting out product, then you're generally going to have your notes organized and ready to go in a draft for everyone to review at the meeting prior to your release. So usually like a week before. And then from there, it's just kind of a quick go over the notes, make sure that they are adhering to the format, that they are including the information that needs to be there and not including information that should not be there. There are times when releases have some very technical information that is not customer facing. And so you don't want to necessarily include that. But you have to kind of mention it in a certain way. So you have to make sure that that messaging is correct. So that's what you use, that meeting prior to a release, to ensure everybody understands what's being said and that it's said appropriately. And then your notes should roll out to whatever resource you're using to publish on, basically the day that your feature goes live.
Okay, all right. So, as you mentioned, sometimes the releases do contain some very technical information. So in case, suppose there is a feature which is more of a technical in nature. Suppose you are releasing an API of your product, and now you have certain things to be explained to your users in a technical fashion, but the users might not be that well versed with those technical jargon. So how do you make it understandable to both this technical and non-technical audience?
So when it comes to your release notes, they generally don't exist in a bubble. They're put out in a location that is accessible among other documentation, so other technical documents. For more technical types of content, you may hyperlink to other documentation that explains it more thoroughly and gives some more background on the particular feature. So that's how you would create some understanding that may not otherwise be there. Additionally, if there are new technical terms that are being introduced in the release,
Mhm.
you might clarify that just simplistically, like introduce the technical term, its acronym, and then you might briefly mention what it is, and then link to another resource that can explain it further, what it does, and how this may be important to your user.
Okay, that makes sense. Like you just highlight what the feature is all about in simpler words, and then you give a link to a larger documentation where they can see all the details in much more detailed way. So that really
Yes.
makes sense. Yeah. Uh, you know, uh, when you're doing this every release after release, so for the period your release notes become a bulky document, and you expect your users use it for the purpose that they are being released for. So how do you measure whether your efforts are really fruitful, or your users are already really reading it and they're really gaining some information that they are expected to get? How do you measure that?
So measurement is one of those things that it depends on the organization and how they want to measure things. There are certain programs that you can add to whatever site you publish your documentation to, and it can track how many users are using or seeing your documents and so forth. But really, ideally, your best indicator of how well your documentation is being used is going to be your support team. Your support team deals with customer interactions more often than anybody else in the organization. And they will tell you whether or not the documentation that you have available to customers is searchable, if
Mhm.
it makes sense to the customer that they can use it to troubleshoot their issues, and whether or not that document is complete enough. With release notes, obviously, you're not going to provide a very detailed type of account of what's going on with the new product or feature. However, the documentation that you link to should give enough supporting information the customer can self-service.
All right.
So just to iterate, your support team is really your best resource for understanding how well your documentation is working.
Yeah. So yeah, again, support team is someone who are at the front. They are at the receiving end, the first point of contact for your customers. So definitely they are the ones who get the queries from customers, and they understand what are the type of queries that they're getting, and so where we are lacking in terms of the documentation. And another thing that I got from your answer is that release notes are not the standalone document. They should link to the relevant documentation of those particular features that are mentioned, so that users can then navigate to those pages and see those things in more detailed way. So it is not,
Exactly.
though they are in summary format, but they should not be standalone. They should link user to relevant documentation. That's another takeaway that I got from your answer. Uh,
Yes.
so there are many tools in market which helps users to manage release notes, streamline the process of generation of release notes. For example, we at Amoeboids, we have developed a Jira add-on called Automated Release Notes for Jira. It actually helps users to pull relevant data from their Jira tickets into their release notes, and then generate release notes in different formats like PDF, email, or Confluence. And they can actually automate the whole process of generation and distribution of release notes. So have you come across any such tools you have used in your profession so far in any of your organizations?
Well, when I was generating release notes, we use Confluence to kind of track everything and keep everything organized.
Mhm.
However, our engineering and R&D team, they were the ones who took care of organizing all of the release notes and sending that over to the technical writer. And whether or not they used any kind of Jira add-on, or even if they used Jira, which I think that they do, but I'm not 100% sure. I really can't say for certain. I didn't have access to that particular tool, I guess you could say. So, however, the notes were filtered from them, and however they collected them and put them together through Confluence to me, the technical writer, and then those were published on an HTML website.
Okay, great. So, my next question to you is a bit general and not just related to release notes. So these days, everywhere there is a buzz called Chat GPT, right? It's a AI chatbot which helps you to generate content. And just yesterday, we also saw an announcement from uh, Google as well that they are also coming up with a rival to Chat GPT. So, what's your take on this? That do you see these AI tools as a threat to the technical writing profession in general?
Um, I think right now it's still a novelty. People are still experimenting and playing with it. I think for the current situation, you still need a human to, at the very least, proofread what's generated by AI.
Right.
AI still sounds very, what's the word I'm looking for? It still sounds very robotic. It doesn't quite flow like a human would speak. However, AI is designed to learn. So as AI becomes more adept with writing and emulating natural speech, we might see a shift away from the need for a technical writing team, but you're still going to need that human element. You're still going to need somebody there checking and making sure that content is correct. So I don't think that it's going to eliminate the technical writer per se, but I do think that it will impact our industry down the road. We're not quite there yet, but I think that we have to be aware that this is going to be part of our reality, and how we work with that and how we understand that is going to be very crucial to the success and continuation of technical writing.
Yeah. So yeah, even my experience also tells the same thing. Like, yeah, I have been using ChatGPT for the last couple of weeks or so, and it is a wonderful tool. It does great wonders. But and having said that, like you mentioned, it still requires the human supervision. It cannot be on its own doing the content. So yeah, at least at the moment, it is not like it's completely automated thing that we can rely on. We certainly need a human supervision, but down the line, you never know. The technology can take you to any heights.
Yeah.
So, coming back to our release notes topic, one question, like many times, even in my organization, I generally write release notes. Though I am from product management team, we don't have dedicated technical writing team as such. So uh, there are some features or products where you cannot be very while explaining the features. You cannot be very short. Like, release notes are generally summary of what are the new things that you are releasing. But for me, who is not a natively trained technical writer, it becomes very difficult to say what I want to say in very short sentences in a concise and easy to read manner. So what are your tips for anyone like me to explain anything in concise and very easy to read language?
Well, the one thing that I constantly, and I've been a teacher of technical writing before, so I've talked to novice technical writers, people who are looking to get into the industry several times. And one of the things I think a lot of new technical writers misunderstand is that technical writing is not a solo act. You've got to work with a lot of people, and you need to build trust with those people, because you are taking what they're saying and you're making it understandable to a different audience. And that can be really off-putting to some people, because they spend a lot of time developing the content that they have and they don't want anybody to mess it up. So you have to build trust with your subject matter experts, with your engineering and your R&D teams. With that being said, the best way to do that is be engaged, take good notes, ask good questions, and get their feedback like immediately. One of the best ways to do that is just have meetings with them. They're busy people. So if you can get on their schedule, spend time with them, even if it's just like 15 minutes, just talking about specific stuff, you build a rapport, and they learn to trust that you are going to do the work that they provide to you justice.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Even I remember from my earlier days in my career, I used to sit with my development team and ask repeated questions to them. What is this all about? What it will do? How it's going to work in the background, in the back end part of the product. Or even though we're not going to explain that to your users in the release note, but having knowledge of that while writing those release notes certainly helps. So you can communicate those things, those features to your audience in a very much better way. So, Chauntain, these are very, valuable insights from you. So what we have got so far, and we are coming to the end of this session. But before I let you go, just a last question. Any takeaways or tips from your side for the budding technical writers who are looking into entering in this field?
Um, Other than what I already told you.
Yes.
um, be interested in what you're writing about.
Right.
Technology is such an interesting and fascinating field because it's so diverse. And regardless of what teams you work on or what companies you work for, the more you can take an interest in what you're writing about, the better your writing is going to be. So take an interest in what you're writing about.
Yeah. So that's a great insight. Again, thank you, Chauntain, for such a wonderful discussion. I'm sure, like I mentioned earlier, our audience must have got very valuable insights from this discussion. I hope you enjoyed too.
Yes, this is great. Thank you for having me.
Great, thank you so much. And to the audience who are watching this episode, thank you again to you as well for joining us today. And follow Amoeboids on our YouTube channel or on LinkedIn to receive updates on the future episodes of this series. See you in the next episode. Thank you and bye bye.